Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Parishscope. This is the podcast newsletter of St. John's Lutheran Church, Sam Prairie. I'm Pastor Chris Sansom.
And I'm Casey Doremus. I'm the creative worship director at Our Savior Lutheran in Washington.
Yeah, that's right. You almost said it. You almost said DGP.
Yeah, I can't remember.
You can't. You can't, though.
It's better for my dyslexia that I have just a normal words title.
Oh man. So anyway, we starting us off, we got kind of a humdinger for a current event on all fronts.
Yeah,
on all fronts. So a little backstory. Casey, you and I, we both listened to a really good podcast called "The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill."
Yeah,
it was like put on by Christianity Today. Really well done.
It's incredibly well done.
It's incredibly well done. Definitely worth a listen. What it is about is it follows this church in Seattle called Mars Hill, and Mars Hill had kind of a rising, and we've talked about it on this podcast before because both of us have listened to it. We were both like, it was really well done. But it follows a certain pastor by the name of Mark Driscoll.
Yes.
Now, Mark Driscoll kind of went a little haywire and was kind of a bully, and he kind of like overdid this idea of biblical masculinity, making basically making masculinity into all those toxic traits that you hear about sometimes. It was very toxic the way he described it and put it. And he was kind of a bully in the background.
Yeah, behind the scenes with elders and people. He was a lot of stories about basically somebody he just had one little issue with and put him in front of like the whole elder board and basically got them kicked out of the church for something that they just had like a small like interaction that he didn't like or something. There was a lot of stuff like that. And he's still kind of like this today because I saw a video just the other day. He still has content out there and does things on YouTube and things, but he had one that was it was something, I can't remember, the title was something along the lines of "Stay-at-home dads aren't real men," and so
that one hits home.
That one hits home a little bit, but then the whole thing was about how men need to work and everything, and which I don't have a disagreement that men should work, but then he, besides just that being the title, which he doesn't really actually say anything about stay-at-home dads in the video,
other than to have the title.
In the description, he had this kind of long paragraph about like, oh, here come all the pansy men out here to like getting riled up about stay-at-home dad, and it's like, what are you trying? Are you just trying to antagonize people?
Yeah,
it's
I think he is.
He really is.
He really is.
He's trying to. That's kind of his method.
Yeah,
is to get people riled up.
So that's a little bit about Mark Driscoll. Now, he was recently invited to speak at a men's conference, and if I remember correctly, it was in Missouri, and it was kind of like this mega church, non-denominational kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I believe the name of the pastor was John Linden.
Okay,
or Linden or Lindell or something like that.
Yeah,
I had never actually heard of this man, so I will chalk it up to my lack of knowledge of megachurch pastors.
You're not up on every megachurch
pastor? You'd think I would be, but apparently I'm not. But anyway, so the day before this conference starts, kind of opening things, they get this guy to show up. Now, this guy, he is an acrobat.
Okay.
He's an acrobat. He can climb up and down a pole. He can swallow swords. He can do all that.
All sorts of stuff.
All sorts of stuff. But here's the thing. First of all, he's also a stripper, a male stripper. In fact,
he really was. See, because that's
he really was a male stripper in Las Vegas.
Oh, gotcha.
And he had added parts to his show, and so for this demonstration, if you will, for a men's conference, for a, dare I say, biblical men's conference, this man starts his show by ripping his shirt off. Well, and then they set up a pole. Now, they argue that the idea behind the pole was so he could do his acrobatic tricks, but it looked an awful lot like a stripper pole.
Yeah.
If you can see the visual here. Mm-hmm. And he did swallow a sword and do other stuff in his little, in his little whatever it was show, I guess. The next day, Mark Driscoll comes out to speak, and he lays into him.
Yeah,
he really lays into him. Now, here's the thing: his metaphors that he used, like he called the pole the Asherah pole, like I think that's a bit of a stretch. You know, I think he said it was Jezebel. I mean, as much as maybe we say Jezebel is sinful and, you know, all that kind of stuff, I guess maybe, again, it's stretching it pretty thin, but it's okay. But he calls him out for this show.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I'm kind of with Driscoll on this one. Like it was, at the very least, it was done in very poor taste. At the very worst, it was downright just devilish. It was, I saw pictures and images and stuff. It was not good.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe that was part of a men's conference,
especially a Christian men's conference.
Yeah. Now Driscoll was actually asked to leave, like in the middle of his speech. He was asked, and he did. He left. He said, "Okay, enough for me," and he's out. You know, so I will say this, like, hey, you know, we criticize enough, and we certainly criticize Driscoll. But I'm going to give him due for this one. He stood up when I don't think anybody else would.
Yeah.
And that's part of what he's about, but that's a part of his negativity as well.
Yeah.
But in this case, I do think he was right to stand up. But it causes one thing, though. I think it is kind of bringing to light is, you know, I think it is important, and maybe this is something that I think we can talk about. Like,
yeah,
you know, and I also realize, like, we've had the past couple podcasts we've kind of like dabbled with this a little bit, maybe a little bit more than not, but it is a hot button issue right now. Like, what does it mean in a biblical sense to be a man, and what does it mean in a biblical sense to be a woman? And I think sometimes we skew that, and obviously this conference is very much evidence of that.
Yeah.
And Driscoll getting kind of kicked off the stage there by the other pastor.
Well, in Driscoll's sense, like, he'll answer that question to you very quickly of what a man should be, and there's so I've heard, you know, I've seen a couple of videos of his and stuff, and the thing is, he can really get you fired up, and I can really agree with him on like 80% of what he's saying, but then he always just tends to take it too
just
far.
Goes too far.
You know, it becomes to a point of like, you know, men should be the the leader of the home, and then but it'll go into almost like and you really need to like put your wives in submission, and it's like, well, you're supposed to be raising up, like, it's not, I mean, I don't know, it's like he goes to a point of almost like you need to really like I don't know, punish them, or like to a point of just almost over the top, where you're not supposed to, you know, it's like you're not supposed to like beat your wife. That's like, you know, not that he says that directly, but
although I think he did at some point.
He probably has, because he gets so fired up. He just says things that you kind of can't believe he would say.
I could be wrong on that, but I think he actually has.
Yeah, and he gets to a point where he just, again, it's like you're with him up to a certain point, and then he just takes a couple more steps, and you're like, no, okay, I'm not with this guy. Okay, let's all take a step back. Yeah.
But I think one of the things that's intriguing and enticing about people like Driscoll is the fact that he does capture some element of masculinity, and he highlights that, and we live in a world that doesn't do that very often.
Right.
And because of that, like, a lot of men are yearning for that kind of discussion, that kind of talk.
Yeah.
Like, what does it mean? Because, you know, men are so beaten down in today's world. And I mean, look, I mean, see, this is why you almost don't want to get down. You don't want to get into this topic, because like it becomes a men versus women thing. And that's not right either. Like, you know, women are put down at some places as well.
Of course.
And you don't want to like sugarcoat or pretend that doesn't exist. But yet at the same time, it's like we've seen a complete 180 done in terms of how people are starting to view men. And you know, it's kind of like the running gag, like, go to a sitcom, any sitcom, and, you know, out of 100 sitcoms, there might be one or two where men are represented well.
Yeah.
The rest of them, the men are doofuses, they're jokes. The husbands are terrible idiots. You know, every now and again there's one where that's not the case.
Yeah.
But by and large, like if you have a sitcom, like a comedic show, and there's a dad in the picture, he's a buffoon.
Yeah.
And that's not good, right? That's not, I mean, it's funny for comic relief, but at the same time, it's like, that's not a good positive image.
Right.
Being a man is not just about being buffoon.
Right. That's one of our great qualities, but
it's a fantastic quality
too. And I think a lot of that also has to do with culturally wanting to disprove like Christians' values of a man being, well, a man should be strong and should be, the leader of his household. And then there's people who just, they want to go, well, why do they have to be the leader? And they want to contradict that. And then they want to skew it into, well, why are men, why do they have to tell women what to do all the time? It's like, well, it's not about a man dictating every single thing their wife does. That's not the point. It's again, it's like you're supposed to lift up your spouse. You're not supposed to be putting them down, but they'll phrase it as, well, you're just trying to like enslave them. You're trying to make them just your servant. And that's not the point. And so I think a lot of that, especially in Hollywood and everything that's come out, it's sort of we gotta make these values look bad, or I don't know, move them. So in that direction.
I think one of the things that I'd like to do, because we do have a little bit of time to talk tonight.
Yeah.
One of the things I think we should do is, first of all, we always talk about it in terms of the relation between man and woman, and that's good. We'll get there, but I think to start with, we just need to say, hey, what does it mean to be a man? And that is a much more intriguing question to me right now, because I think this is where we struggle as a society, because I think we confuse these two. And again, I know we've talked about this, like I think we did last week a little bit, and we've talked about it in the past as well. But it's like this is a really intriguing question, because the culture around us can't really define what it means to be a woman, but then they also kind of distort what it means to be a man. And so we need to actually pose that question, I think. What does it really mean to be a man? In a biblical sense. In a biblical sense. I don't mean it from just purely cultural, although culture sometimes plays a role in this. But even when we scour through Holy Scriptures, what do we see? What are the qualities that men should have?
Yeah.
And I mean, again, this is, you see stuff all over the place, because a lot of the books of the Bible were directed towards the men of the church, because again, they're the spiritual head of the household. More about that in a little bit, because you're right. That doesn't mean that they're beating down their wives,
right?
But they're the spiritual head of the household, and what that means is that they should be focused, they should be direct, but also that they lead the way. And I think this is something that's really important, that's really lost in our culture, is the fact that everybody gets so offended about everything. Like they want women to lead the way, or this to lead the way. And it's not saying that women can't lead the way sometimes. But by and large, men are ultimately called to lead the way. Now, when I say that, I don't necessarily mean like, oh, they're going on a trail, they need to lead the way in the trail. But what I do mean, though, is from the standpoint of whether it's children, our spirituality, or even defining things like right and wrong, the men should lead the way. And studies have borne this out, right? Like children will follow their mothers till about 12 years old, let's say.
Yeah.
And mother will tend to act as a nurturer. And again, that's not saying that all mothers are nurturers, or all mothers do this or that, but by and large, this is generally the trend that tends to follow. After that, they'll follow their peers for a little bit, but then they'll start to follow their fathers. And so what their fathers do is what they tend to follow. And so, this should be evident. Like if you want your child to know right from wrong, make sure that, if you're a woman, make sure your man knows right from wrong.
Yeah.
Because if he doesn't know right from wrong, your kids aren't going to know. Because your kids are ultimately going to look to the father to figure out how they should handle the world. Now, again, are there exceptions to every rule? Absolutely. But by and large, this tends to be how it works out. And so you want to find somebody. And what it partially means to be a man is to have that well-defined, well-understood definition. Like, this is right, this is wrong, this is the direction that we need to head. Now, again, I'm not saying that they can't talk it over with the wives, and I'm not saying that the wives can't, in some respects, lead the way on certain things. But what I am saying is when push comes to shove, the men need to lead the way a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that from a cultural standpoint, especially in America, a lot of men are not. And I mean, don't get me wrong. Again, I get it. You see a lot of movements out there. I remember the Me Too movement from years and years, like a couple years ago. And like, let me tell you guys, from a guy's standpoint, that movement can be very scary.
Oh, yeah.
Because like as simple as going and asking somebody out on a date all of a sudden becomes this, what if she says this? What if she says this? I need to make sure that there's a crowd to make sure that, like I'm perceived correctly and yada, yada, yada. It's.
Well, yeah, there were stories I remember around that time. There was a comedian, Azim Ansari. There was that he, the story came out that he was just really aggressive towards this girl at a bar, asking her out.
Yeah,
and when they really got down to the story, it was kind of like, well, he just made me feel uncomfortable. It's like, well, did he do something? Did he like threaten you, or was he doing something? And well, no, I just didn't. It's just basically she wasn't interested. He was really trying, his best to, like ask her out.
Yeah.
And that kind of, when it, kind of boiled down to like, well, he didn't actually do anything aggressive. He was just trying to be confident and like ask this girl out. And that's just kind of how the story, and he apologized for it and said he was sorry that she felt uncomfortable. And so, but it's just kind of, if she was into the guy, he probably could have acted the same exact way. And it would have not been a story.
And that's just it. Like, and this is a great example of it being done poorly.
Mm-hmm.
See, the Me Too movement started with women feeling emboldened to tell their stories about ways that they were abused.
Yeah.
And a lot of the abuse that came out, that find out like, oh my gosh, all this stuff is really happening. It was horrendous.
Yeah.
Thank goodness some of those guys were caught and captured. That is uncalled for. It's unacceptable. But then it's like it kept going. And then all of a sudden it got wrapped up into anytime you were uncomfortable or anytime somebody said something you didn't like. And it was like, and there's still cases now.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and again, I don't want to, I feel like I read recently that Kevin Spacey was acquitted.
Acquitted?
I feel like I read that. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I have not read that. But...
Well, and that's just it, right? An accusation was made.
Yeah.
His whole career went
he's
to
gone.
nothing. He's gone now. And then I believe he got acquitted in the court case. Now, what does that mean? I don't know. Maybe he did do it and just got away with it, or maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because again, it was a while back that I read it. But
well, I think the scariest part is, and I know, I mean, what my father's best friend he was a pastor.
Yeah.
And one of his biggest rules was that he never, ever met with a woman from the church in his office without somebody else.
Yeah.
He would, if they're really upset, he's like, that's great. I will tell you that I need to have at least like one other person there. Mm-hmm. And it can be there were requirements that he'll listen to. He definitely wants to hear your complaints or anything, but it was like, he just wanted to make sure he wasn't being accused of something.
Yep.
And, so.
And you'll notice, like, even in church, we put in glass doors for all the pastors' offices.
Yeah.
And that's part of that reason. Like, you want to block out the hearing, so no, you don't want people to hear you per se. But yeah.
Yeah, it's just, and it is a little, I mean, honestly, it is a little terrifying because if you got accused of something that you didn't do, you're kind of, you have really no way of getting out of that because you just, no matter what you say, everybody goes, well, that's what someone would say if they were in that so it is very scary, honestly.
Yeah.
And
but again, and I, this is where you kind of get the back and forth banter, but it's like the other side of that shoe though is the fact that part of the reason that the Me Too movement took off the way it took off was because you had a lot of men acting very poorly.
Yes.
And again, and this is kind of bringing us back to the topic, like, in order for a society, in my opinion, to truly function, you got to have both men and women, and they both have to have certain roles that they play. And one of the roles of men is you need good men to basically do good. And no, I understand. I'm a Lutheran, right? They're never going to be perfect. They're going to have, but and you see this in some places in other countries. I always bring up this one video that I can never show. But it's a fascinating, there's other countries that have various feminist movements, and one of them, and I can't remember the name of the country, but what they do is the women march topless.
Yeah.
And they'll graffiti themselves or whatever, but they'll march around topless, and then what they'll do is they'll graffiti all the buildings and everything else. Mm-hmm. And in the midst of at least one of these places in one of these towns is a church. Now, it's actually a Catholic church, but what the men do, they lock arms and they surround the church.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And years ago, there were videos. I don't know if they're still there, but there's videos of these women, and they'll spit on them, and they'll hit them, and they'll kick them, and they'll, be punching these guys, and the guys will just stand there and take it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there is a good example of men being men.
Yeah.
They're not violent to the ladies. They don't punch them or hit them back. And in a lot of ways, they understand the fact that they're just going to take that.
Yeah.
And they're going to do what is right, which is protect the church. And, we kind of lost that. We kind of have lost that in a large part of our culture today. Men don't see going to church as big and bold anymore. Although I will say this, the way the culture seems to move here, pretty soon it's going to be, to be the outcast, you're going to go to church.
Yeah. There's quite I don't know. I think things are moving in a very interesting direction right now.
Yeah.
Because there was such a period of time where it was, I don't know. It was like, I think when I was in college and stuff, there was such a movement of everybody. It would be like, oh, you're a Christian. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, you're so dumb for believing in that.
Yeah.
But it seems like more and more, and I think a lot of it actually has to do with social media, because there's people who now have voices using the internet who wouldn't have had that, who are going, no, like, I believe in this, and this is what and now there are different streaming platforms and different things out there that are now encouraging or now like allowing these people to be out there and do things, and so it's interesting that I think we're definitely seeing more of a rise of people defending their faith and I don't think it was, I really don't think it was that people were not defending their faith. I think they just didn't have any way to do it in a large public way, and now they do.
So I think one of the things that's interesting with this, and I'll kind of say this and we'll talk about it, but then I also want to get back to male and female relations, because I've been talking a lot about what it means to be a man, all that kind of stuff. Don't really know if I've covered the topic well, but hey. But recently, so just today, actually, it's Tuesday. What is it? April 16th?
I think so.
Yeah, was the pastors' conference, and I was at the pastors' conference. Now, this didn't happen at this pastors' conference, but the pastors' conference before, we usually have one in October and in May. Okay. Our May, in this case, April, but spring. So this was our spring conference. But at the October conference, we had a sectional paper done, and the sectional presenter, and this was actually Pastor Tylen at Camp Silka, gave this, and I've asked him to hopefully one day bring it to St. John's, because it is a phenomenal what he did. What he does is he tracks the movement of shame and the impact it has on cultures. And one of the things that he talks about is how culture has redefined what it means to have shame. And one of the things that the church needs to do is recapture what it means to have shame. Because what we've done is we've ultimately allowed the culture to take over that. And the way he talks about it is fascinating. He's like, it's not like this happened like yesterday. this was happening in the 1600s and the 1700s and the 1800s. Like the way they defined shame was not necessarily biblical. And so now what we have is the outgrowth of that kind of manipulation of what it means to be shame and to experience that shame and guilt as a society. And he says what the church really needs to do is recapture this biblical identity of what it means to have shame and where shame is good and where it's bad. And you know, and so it really was fascinating. But I kind of come back to that because it's like, you know, I mean, again, even we go back like 40, 50 years ago, think about the things that were shameful.
Right.
Versus now. It's like completely upended.
Yeah.
And to some regard, it's almost backwards. Now our culture is actually trying to tell us that, like, if we are, you know, in a nuclear family, per se, you know, if we're, you know, husband and wife and kids, like, now it's like that family's almost shamed.
Right.
Like, you know, and it's like, it's so backwards and it's so twisted. And so, yeah, just kind of recapturing even that identity of what it means to be a man and woman in Christ and all that. And that kind of brings me back around.
Yeah.
You know, to the topic of, you know, what does it mean? Because like we were talking about a man, right, and what it means to be a man, but then we haven't talked about the women folk much. You know, but the Bible actually does do a lot of clarity in terms of women and men in general, and it talks about marriage. And the passage we usually go to is Ephesians 5. And for good reason, because Paul really spells it out there. And yeah, there is that verse in chapter 5, verse 22, women submit to your husbands. And the word there, submit, it literally means to place oneself underneath. And so that is, you know, that's what submit means, right? But everybody then forgets the passage that comes just a few verses later where it says, men, love your wives. And he doesn't just say, love your wives, like be romantic, buy her roses. Like he says, no, like love your wives as Christ loved the church, giving himself up for her. Like, so the idea is that like the husband is going to sacrifice of himself for the sake of his bride. Now, I mean, think about that. Paul even says that, right? Like right there, right? You know, as Christ loved the church. Christ is not going to go down a sinful path for the sake of his bride. That's not what it means.
Right.
But yet Christ is going to sacrifice of himself while holding on to what is good and true and honest and the good things and lead forward, right? But he's still going to sacrifice for the sake of his bride, the church. And so we as men are called to that same cause. Like, yes, we are to lead the way. But when we say we lead the way, it again, we always make it into this like bully thing. It's really not a bully thing. It's just leading with what is good and what is right. And at the same time, sacrificing of yourself to uphold your bride, which means, guess what? You should probably get her opinion on things, you know, don't just like say, sit back down on the man. Like, no, you know, you value her opinion. You, in fact, to some degree, you uphold her opinion. And as long as her opinion is also good and right, then go for it. Yeah. You know? So there you go. There's my 2 cents. And I realized we didn't even come close. We're just scratching the surface. Just scratching the surface. But anyway. Now, we've talked about a really bad example of what it means to be a man by hiring a Vegas stripper to do a sword dance.
Right.
I would also recommend, though, there's a book out there by CPH. It's by a man by the name of Jeff Hemmer. He was a year ahead of me at Seward and in seminary, so I know him quite well. He's a good guy, great guy, in fact. But he does have, and I can't remember the name of it. I should have looked it up before I got here tonight. But he does have a great book on like manhood and biblical manhood. And well worth a read. If you're a young man or if you're an old man and you're like, I would like to know more about this topic, fantastic book, well worth the read.
It would be funny if you said he's got this great book, horrible guy, but great.
Yeah, he's a terrible guy.
Horrible man, but great book on how to be a good man.
Jeff Hemmer is his name. He's a great guy. And I really mean that. And he's got a rockin' beard. He's got like one of those big old long beards like down to here.
Yeah. My beard has gotten longer over the last few years.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I can get down to that, like onto your chest sort of. thing, you know? I just don't know if I can do that. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it would be. It would be. I've thought about it, like brushing it out, seeing how long I could go, but it gets too frizzy and it gets frustrates me.
It does, you know, I don't know. It does seem, if we're talking about being a man, it does seem very manly to have a large beard, but I can't.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it just does.
Very manly.
You know? I don't know where this now my my grandfather, he did a couple contests back in the day. He had like a handlebar mustache, real big handlebar mustache for quite a while when I was a kid. And I don't know if that's really manly anymore.
Oh, but, sure it is.
But I mean, there's a lot of like,
if you can do a handlebar mustache, do it.
I know. I would. I feel like I should do it once in my life, just as like a homage to him.
Get some wax and like, yeah.
I know. I should try it out. I don't know.
Yeah, you should. Oh man. Oh, that's just too much. It's too much.
Too much.
Too much awesomeness is what that is.
That's right.
Yeah. You ever seen that comic? It's like, if you're wondering and thinking about whether or not you should grow a beard, just wait and ponder on the question, and it will reveal itself.
It is funny. We were looking at my sister-in-law and her husband were over the other day, and you know, of course, I don't know. We since we just moved back to our hometown, something about we saw so and so or whatever. So then we pulled out the yearbooks and started looking through, and it really. I think my life would have been much different had I been able to grow a full beard in high school, because I don't have the face for clean shaven. I don't have the face for it. I have a neck that goes directly into my head with no crease, no nothing. It's just it's like one tube of just my head and my neck. And so a beard is very, very essential for me to look somewhat decent as a human being. Yeah, I need it. So you know, you look, and you go back and think, man.
I always say I am very Irish. Like I got like puffy cheeks, and
well,
you know, I shave my face. I'm like a very happy Irish man. Like it's funny. It's funny. I haven't shaved my beard all the way off in several years. I like to do it every now and again, just like I can see my face again. Like that's what I look like.
Last time I shaved my face was when my oldest brother got married, and I think they've been married 15 years, maybe longer. I don't remember. Yeah. But my parents made me shave off my beard, and it really upset me because I know I don't look good without it. But they're like, you have to. And I also, another thing, I don't know if this is interesting, but one of the reasons I need a beard is because I have two very predominant moles on my chin.
Yeah,
like on my chin, and one like just on the side of my face. And when I shaved it off after having a beard, they were like white because I guess they had been covered up. I don't know how that works, but they were like you couldn't even really see them. But I mean, they were still bumps, but they had no color. And so a part of me kind of was like, I wonder if I shaved it off, I just want to see that one more, you know. But then again, I think my kids might freak out if I did that.
Yeah.
They're very young, and they're going to be like, "Who are you?"
Stranger.
Yeah. So, but you know, that's all just manly stuff. So
it is. That's right. That's right. I'm gonna go cut wood now.
That's right. Yeah, cut some wood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Well, I wanted to, as far as a question for you, if we have time for that, I was gonna ask because I think I see a lot of people. This is a subject that, I mean, especially lately I've been researching a lot, is just sort of the idea of there's a lot of congregations out there that people are just not singing. Like the congregation doesn't sing.
Yeah.
And the idea of what in the Bible, you know, what exactly is praise and worshiping God entail? Because that's something, I mean, you know, we like tithing's at least not that it's simple in the fact of the act of doing it for some people, but tithing's like pretty straightforward. Like, you know, you need to give some of your blessing, you know, what you've been given over to God. And there's some other things that I feel like they're pretty self-explanatory, but with worship, I feel like some people feel very like, well, I don't really feel comfortable singing, so I'm not going to sing.
Yeah.
But what exactly, you know, how important is worshiping God in all that?
So one of the things that we need to do is we need to talk about something. All biblical texts can be basically broken down into two groups, right? Mm-hmm. Either descriptive, they're describing an event, like they describe something that happened, or prescriptive. They are texts that are telling you to do something, and not just like some past people, but you today.
Right.
And so whenever we look at a text, we got to kind of ask ourselves, okay, is this describing something? And, then we can talk about like, well, what should I learn from that? And all that kind of, we could talk all about it. Like, there's a lot of stuff to learn, even if it is just descriptive. It's a text about ancient Israel going to the promised land. Like, okay, well, we're not being called upon by the Lord to go to war with the Canaanites, but we can learn about the Lord's promise of his land and what he did for his people, and recognize that God has made promises to us and he's going to hold on to those promises. He's going to follow through with them. And so, there's a lot of things that we can learn and not learn. Mm-hmm. That being said, the Bible is just full of stuff talking about singing praises to the Lord. It talks about making a joyful noise. We recognize that the Psalms, a lot of them were more than likely sung.
Yeah.
Not all of them per se. Some of them were more prayers, or chants even, but like probably some of them were sung. In terms of how exactly that was done, I don't know. I don't think there's and I'm trying to think, like, again, there's sometimes whenever things happen in Holy Scripture and people just sing. That is to say, they you think of like the book of Revelation, like, when the Lamb of God enters a scene, like, and all the angels are there and they, everybody breaks out in song. They're like compelled, like they can't help themselves.
Like a Broadway musical.
Like a Broadway musical, wow. Except for like 1,000,000 times better.
Yeah.
Nothing against Broadway, but 1,000,000 times better. And so you get all that and you realize like singing isn't a pretty important factor in terms of worship. Now, that being said, this is one of the beauties of it, right? One of the things that I think needs to be kind of addressed is America. Yes, I said it, America. Here's a negative thing about America, and I realize like whenever I say a statement like that,
it.
I know, right? I'm gonna get hate mail.
Careful,
right? My blood runs red, white, and blue. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, me too. Yeah.
But if there was ever a problem with America.
Which there isn't. Just joking.
Yeah. But it is. We got like crazy individualism.
Yeah.
We got crazy individualism, and because we have crazy individualism, like we always push everything into very individualistic terms. Mm-hmm. Right? Everything has to be, how does the individual feel or not feel? And I mean, think about it. Like we get to this whenever we talk about Holy Communion. Like a massive part of Holy Communion is the fact that you are going up to the table with fellow believers that believe just like you. You are in communion with these people.
Right.
You are in fellowship with these people. Open communion basically just allows anybody to go up there. How do you know if you're in fellowship with that person? How do you know if you are really, a brother and sister in Christ with that person? You don't, because it's just open communion. Everybody's welcome. Anybody's welcome. And so you see, but the problem is then they go, well, how can you tell what's in that individual's heart? Like, well, you're right. I can't like peer in and look at their heart, but I might start saying, well, what part of the community do they play? Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about the church as a whole. And we can kind of look at singing the whole way. Not everybody's going to be gifted at singing.
Right.
But they're part of a church that sings.
Mm-hmm.
Because the church sings. And yeah, I mean, I guess we could say the church, the Bible, I don't know if it ever explicitly says in your worship service you have to sing. But songs are all over the place in Holy Scripture. And I think it would be very dangerous to start getting rid of music. I really do.
Mm-hmm. I agree. That's
yeah, right.
That's right.
But that doesn't mean that everybody has to be a good singer, and it doesn't mean that everybody at every instance has to sing. It just means that the church as community sings. And if you're comfortable singing, great. If you would like to sing, great. We would love to hear a joyful noise, even if that joyful noise is not in tune. Trust me, don't listen to my singing. You will find out what out of tune is, because that's exactly how I sing. But that being said, is that, okay, so one individual maybe doesn't like singing, great, but he's a part of a community, and that community wants to sing a joyful noise, and as they should. Again, music is just too important a role of Holy Scripture, like all over the place. And on top of that, music also helps with memory retention, with helping us look at things, memorize things. That's actually one of the big debates, right? Our old hymnody. This is part of the reason that people are very antsy about getting rid of it, and rightfully so, absolutely rightfully so, because go back and look at some of those hymns and some of the things that they say.
Right.
They go into some deep waters.
Yeah.
And some of those deep waters are simply unmatched by most contemporary songs.
Well,
I will say most, because there are some contemporary songs that are starting to come out.
I will say there's lots of contemporary songs that use metaphors about water and deep water. So let's keep that straight. No, it's a straight.
That's right. There's deep water.
I mean, there's literally a song called "The Ocean." So anyway, go on. No, you're making a good point. Sorry.
But that is one of the big complaints. And I mean, again, though, I think, and I had a professor who wrote a paper on this, and I thought this was fascinating. It's like, there are some newer contemporary songs that are starting to come out and have been coming out for the last 5-10 years, I'd say, that are actually doing a pretty good job of going into some of those deeper waters.
Yeah.
But if you look at some of the contemporary songs from like the 80s, that old expression 7-11 songs, right?
Yes.
Same 7 words 11 times. And I mean, it's funny, but it's funny because the stereotype is kind of true.
Right.
Like, especially some of those songs in like the late 70s and the 80s, like some of those were just notorious for that. Not that they weren't catchy, that they didn't get stuck in your head. They did.
Well, and there's I think, so there's also a debate among musicians, I think, that of course there's musicians who can't stand this song is only 4 chords the whole time. It's the same 4 chords. I will be honest, though, for me, I actually really like those songs because I don't think about the chords. I just get into like, okay, now I'm actually focused on worshiping God, and I'm not thinking, oh crap, wait, the third time through this, I have to switch to a D minor chord and do that, and which isn't. I mean, it's not bad that to have complexity, but there's also some beauty in the fact of having something that just you get into this sort of you can zone out of the technical side of it, and you can just start worshiping. And so there's on that hand, there's some songs like that I really love because I can just kind of sit there and worship and not be so in my own head about what's coming up next.
Yeah. But it also helps, like, even if you don't necessarily sing, but to listen to as other people sing and as the worship goes through, it is something. It will, again, it helps you memorize things and remember things. Like I love this. Like I remember, who was I talking to? Oh, I can't remember. I was talking to somebody, and they were asking me about early service, and they're like, "Why do we always sing that one thing?" And I was like, "What one thing? I don't know." They're like, "Oh, the one thing." And I was like, "No, I mean, we sing a lot of things." Like, what do you mean? And they're like, "Well, he talks about the seas and the God made the earth and the sea." And I was like, "Oh, the Venite." In the early service, we sing the Venite, but that's a psalm.
Yeah.
Now, right offhand, I can't tell you exactly which psalm it is, but like this person had like half the psalm memorized.
Yeah, right.
And they're over here going, "I don't know why we sing that." And it's like, well, you just kind of told us why. You sang it because now you know this, and they obviously didn't like chanting it. They didn't like that process, but yet they understood it and they knew it. And like, that's a huge part of singing. Now, it's not the only thing, but like you can also sometimes just enjoy the music that's in front of you and what you're experiencing and hearing. So again, I think there's a lot of pluses for music as a community. And so, yeah, even if you got a person that like refuses to sing, like they just don't want to sing, like they can still enjoy the beauty of music, the beauty that music creates and gives around them, the theological aspect of it, the memorization aspect of it. And all of that they're going to get without singing. And just think about how much more they get when they actually join in the singing.
Yeah.
They'll get that plus some. And it's just like, yeah, I mean, again, so I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, well, there's a command of the Lord that says you got to do. No, I'm not going to say that. But at the same time, I'm going to say, I think it's really important for worship to have music. And I think it's really important that as a community of believers that we sing together.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, again, even if maybe you don't want to sing right away, maybe you will eventually, or maybe you won't, but join the community. Come be a part of our community, and we'll all sing together. And if you don't sing, that's okay. We'll just sing a little louder.
Yeah. Well, it's, so I'm at this new place and everything. So I went on, actually, I will say this is something, they call it social media. And a lot of times we forget that the first word of it is social. It's supposed to be like a way to create community. So
yeah.
I went on Facebook and I found a worship leader group. And so I got on there, I joined it. And I don't know, the first rule probably is like, don't talk about this publicly or something.
Probably.
They don't say anything bad.
Second rule, don't talk about worship club.
Don't talk about worship club, yeah. But one of the things someone brought up is that they said that typically you have kind of a rotation of songs that you work through because your congregation needs to know the song.
Yeah.
Because we all know when you go like watch a band play or something and they play songs you've never heard before. And after like an hour of that, it's like, okay, I don't know. It's like, can you play YMCA or something? I know.
Yeah, something.
And this one guy was saying that, it's the weirdest thing because if we repeat a song, even if it's like we play a song we played a month ago, I'll have people complain about it. And he goes, but nobody's singing. None of the congregation will sing. And I saw someone in the comments go, well, it sounds like they're wanting to just observe your worship and they don't want to join in.
Yeah.
Like they just want to allow you to do the worship part. Okay, they're doing it, so I don't need to worry about it. And it was interesting because I never actually thought of that. I mean, I've heard a lot for years now. People have talked about congregations aren't singing, and some of that might have to do with the range of songs, like the vocal range is too extreme for like congregations or whatever. But that it was interesting to hear someone say that of, well, some people just seem like they just want to sit on the sideline and not worship and let if they're just letting other people do it, then I don't need to do it. But that's why I kind of want to ask you, because it is, I mean, being involved is a great thing.
So you're bringing up a really good point. And you're right. I to be honest, I wasn't quite going to go there because I wasn't sure that was the direction of your question.
Yeah.
And we could talk about this in terms of modern movements of churches and all that, but a lot of modern movements of churches have made praise bands front and center.
Right.
But more importantly, they've made praise bands into a show. They'll shoot lasers, they'll have fog machines, they do all this, and it's a show. And okay, you can sing along if you know the song, but you don't have to. But again, one of the things that you lose is that aspect of community. Look, again, I mean, you go to any household, like, that house has its traditions. They have the things that they do. And maybe not everybody can do everything, right? If you got little kids, they're not going to be driving a car.
No.
Because you need to be at least 16 to drive a car.
Yeah.
Like, even if you're part of the household, there's certain things that they can't do. Maybe there's certain things that they don't like to do. And even though the rest of the household can go, okay, well, we'll do this for a while. You don't have to do this right now. At the same time, like, there's also an aspect of, like, kind of peas and carrots kind of thing, right? Like, sometimes we don't like peas and carrots, but we still have to eat them because we want to be healthy.
Yeah.
And right.
So, I definitely eat my peas and carrots every time. All right, so we're going. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, there's some things we don't want to do, but it's better for us if we do.
But yes, worship as a whole is not a spectator sport, and it's not supposed to be. And that's one of the things, like, a lot of modern day churches, they kind of make them into spectator things.
Yeah.
And so I can agree with that. If we saw a growing sense of people just looking at our services as a spectator, we would have to change something up. Yeah. Something's got to give, right? but also realize like we also have prayers and the sermon, and we also have creeds, and we have all these other things. Like it's not just the songs, it's other things too. But it's absolutely right. Like that might be your litmus test for a much larger problem, because again, worship is not something that's necessarily a spectator sport. It is something that we are actively participating in. And I mean, again, like this is why you do silly things like sit and then stand and then sit and then stand, like and you go, why are we doing this? And there's reasons for all of it, but part of it is because you're an actual part of worship. You're not just sitting by the sideline ready to be entertained. You are actually an active part of this. And the same thing with the singing.
I think, I don't know, it's I think participating in it really brings a lot to your life. I think that. I don't know. I mean,
absolutely. And I would agree. But I also know that, like, if you got a piano in your house and your whole family's singing, you might have a kid or two that doesn't want to sing right that second.
Right.
And you might not force them. Maybe later you say, hey, what's going on? But
I would think, okay, metaphor coming in hot, and you let me know.
Huge metaphor.
If this is, but when you have someone, it's their birthday, and everybody gathers around. It's like we light the candle on the cake and we all sing happy birthday. It would be very weird to me if just there was like 3 people who are like, no, not singing, not my thing. It's like everybody sings happy birthday. At least, I mean, and I'm sure now someone's going to be like, oh, there's people in my family who don't sing it or something. But I mean, there's something about it. It's like you're showing this person like love towards, like, you're happy for them, hey, your birthday. And so it'd be weird if just, okay, well, 3 people are going to sing it and everybody else is just going to sit there silently and watch them, and then they're going to eat the cake. Because because I want the cake, but I'm not singing, this or what. So, I mean, we can spend all night if we want figuring out how that metaphor works. Is the cake communion? I don't know, but is the milk with it? Is that the blood of Christ? We don't know. That's just the metaphor.
Gracious.
But
no, just stop.
Wouldn't that just be kind of a socially weird thing to be like, yeah, I'm not going to sing happy birthday to you because it's not my thing, not a singer.
Well, but again,
but everybody sings.
Like what if, like, okay, so what if you have somebody that has like a super high pitched voice and they know that the second they sing, everybody's going to hear it and it's super obnoxious. What they might do is they might mouth the words but not actually sing.
Right. Sure.
Because but again, they want to feel a part of that community.
Yes.
They understand that they're expected to sing, they need to sing, but they are also self-conscious and insecure.
Yeah.
I would not stop everything, point that person out and go, why aren't you singing?
Yes. Yeah. Well, no, of course
Again,
not,
we want to make them comfortable to the point where they eventually feel like they're such a part of our community that we want to hear their voice and their joyful singing, even if it's a high-pitched voice and it's a little obnoxious.
Yeah.
Like, we honestly don't care. We would much rather just have you sing with us.
Yeah.
And so yeah, but here's the thing. I'm always a little hesitant in worship to make like this hard and fast command.
Yeah.
Right? I don't want to command something that Scripture doesn't command. And again, I mean, you're asking this question. We don't do any prep work before this.
Right.
After this, I'm probably going to do some searches, right. Make sure there's no like actual verses that say, no, you have to sing. But I don't recollect anything right off the top of my head that says, oh, you have to sing. Now, again, we talk a lot about the highlights and the joys and the pluses of music.
Right.
I do think it needs to be a part of worship. But I'm hesitant to make some kind of a command that says, oh, no, you have to sing. Now, do I still want them to be a participant in the worship? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Worship is not a time to just be entertained. It is an active role that you're playing.
Yeah.
And yes, singing is usually a part of that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's lots, I don't know. There's ways to, I hope people want to participate, or that's not the right word, participate in it. And I don't know, it's just, but it's interesting. I don't know, like one of the Psalms, I was kind of trying to look into this, and one of the Psalms was talking about, sing a joyful song to the Lord.
Yeah.
But it was written by David. So it's like, you're kind of, is there a specific spot where God says you need to be worshiping me? We have all sorts of stuff about he's a jealous God and he wants your attention and all that sort of stuff. but I didn't know if, as far as worship goes, if it really says, you know.
But again, I think one of the things that, again, I don't want to get too off track, but one of the things that, I'm trying to bring home here is the fact that like, you know, if we're talking about a group of people, like, okay, again, yeah, we might have a bigger problem, right? Because they're viewing it worship completely wrong. But on the other hand, if we're talking about just like an individual, we want that individual to be like, okay, they're a part of the community of believers. The community of believers is singing. So maybe they're not in this specific moment singing, but like the community is. And that's, to me, that to me is more important.
Yes.
Like, again, this is where America gets it wrong. I mean, no. It's bad. But, you know, I mean,
I turn my radio up. Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
Right. But you know, but again, this is where it comes down to like we focus so much on things like individual freedoms and rights and all that kind of stuff. And to be honest, a lot of that
have no rights when worship starts. Okay, sorry. No,
but again, a lot of that is really, really good stuff, and I don't want to say that's bad. But what happens is whenever everything like translates into that, you lose a sense of community, and everything just becomes about the individual.
Yeah.
And church is not an individual thing. It is a community of things.
Yeah.
You know, in a church, you have a community. And just like a community is going to have some good stuff happen in it. It's going to have some bad stuff happen in it. Yep. It's going to have, you know, bumps and bruises and, you know, and whatever. And sometimes you're going to have arguments, and sometimes, you know, it's like you're going to have ups and downs and everything else in between. It's like that's part of being a community.
Yes.
And a church is a community.
Yeah.
So don't want to lose sight of that.
Yeah. I do want to say, you know, when you talked about like you have a screechy voice or something that, you know, people are going to judge you. There's a friend of mine that we grew up going to church together, my buddy, and it was always the first song when it would start, and the days we would realize, oh crap, we sat right in front of his mom. Like we remember, we both would look at each other, and it was like, oh no, because the whole service she had such a high voice, and it was just, and she was loud, really, really loud.
Yeah.
But you know, I joke about it, but now I look back and it's like there's something kind of beautiful about that. You know, it really is, because I don't look back and go like, oh man, that was so obnoxious. I look at it as like she was singing. I mean, she was worshiping, and I don't look at it in a negative way. I look at it like, wow, how beautiful that was.
You know, and I mean, to, you know, kind of the similar story, not quite the same. When I was at not seminary, when I was at Seward, Nebraska, Concordia University, there was a gentleman. He was one of my buddies, one of my friends, I guess. Terrible singing voice. I mean, I'm bad. He was really bad. And you know, I mean, like, song comes on the radio, he's not going to sing with it. Like, stuff happens, he's not singing. You get that boy to chapel, though, it was like, man, joyful noise to the extreme. He would, like, lift his head high. He was singing, man. And he was happy and he was joyful. And honestly, it was terrible singing. But I would love to sit next to that guy.
Right.
Because it honestly was a freeing experience, and it was a very joyful experience. He loved singing hymns in chapel, and he just loved it. And so he just poured his heart and soul into it. And there's something that's really awesome about that.
Yeah.
And okay, the first couple times you're kind of like jarred a little bit. You're like, whoa, what just happened? But honestly, after that, man, I don't want to say I would always stand next to him or sit next to him, but like there were a lot of times when I did, just because of that. Like it was just it was almost infectious, like the amount of joy and pleasure he got out of singing those songs. Never see him sing anywhere else.
Yeah.
You will never see that man sing except for in church.
Yeah. It is funny because it's one of those things that it takes a lot of confidence to sing out. And like, you know, I studied music and we had what we call sight singing. And so you basically would have a pretty simple melody written out, and you would have to sit there and like, do, re, mi, re, do, re. You had to just go without a piano, without anybody helping you.
Yeah.
And I had a teacher who made us, you know, do it individually. The teacher before had us do it as a group.
Yeah.
And it was so nerve-wracking to be in front of all these people, and everybody wants to impress each other because we're all music majors. But then the weird thing is, after about 2 weeks of it, nobody cared. Not a single person. It was like, if you whiffed a note, you'd get done and just go, well, that was rough, and everybody would just kind of like giggle and like, yeah. And then the next person would go and they'd whiff it, and you'd just be like, yeah, that's just how it goes. I mean, we all got to the point of like, we're not perfect. Like, we all know, some of it. And of course, there was a couple people like they would sing it perfectly every time. Great. But none of us really like put them on a pedestal because they were better. It was just kind of a weird, like, I don't know. We just got over it. You know? Which I understand most people in church probably don't have the benefit of going through what I went through, where I was like forced to do it. But, I don't know. Hopefully it's just a little encouraging if some people out there are like, I can't do it. It's not for me. Hopefully you feel like there's a positive reason to do it.
Yeah, I think so. Lots of positives.
Lots of positives. Yeah.
Oh, man.
All right. Well, is it time?
Is it time? I think it is. Church chatter. All right. Well, we're entering into a little bit of a lull period right now. It's actually not.
All the excitement's done.
Right? All the excitement's done. So yeah. We had somebody here on Sunday from Concordia University in Chicago. So that was pretty fun. I was able to attend there and talk because I have a daughter that's in 8th grade. So,
oh man,
I know, right? Save now, save.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was good. But like looking forward, we're halfway through April. The real big thing is the first Sunday in May is going to be Confirmation Sunday.
Nice.
And we're going to have, I think we're going to have 4 or 5 confirmands. And I know I'm being indecisive right now, but please bear with me. It's 10:45 in the middle of the night, and I'm tired, and my brain is not working. So anyway, tomorrow I'll kick myself. But anyway, so we're looking forward to that, of course. Confirmation. We'll have First Communion the week after that. And then, of course, we'll also have our Stepping Forward in Faith with our blanket ceremony. Oh, yeah. And that's, I think, on like May 19th. So, I mean, we just got a lot of things coming up before we enter into summer. And, of course, don't forget, we also have VBS coming up.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's right. We have VBS coming up. And if I remember correctly, that's my dates are all wrong.
Yeah.
I want to say like June 9th through the 13th, but I think that's wrong. Yeah. But it's like it starts that weekend, like June 9th.
Oh wow! So you guys do it? It's early.
Yeah, we usually do it pretty quick, and so it's like So the 9th through whatever that Thursday is, and so I want to say, and so it's going to be pretty awesome. I think actually Pastor Kevin Biltman's coming back to be kind of a guest pastor for the day, and so we certainly look forward to that. And
is there a theme? Do you guys have a theme for VBS?
No, we don't believe in themes.
Okay.
No, I honestly, yes, we do. As the time gets closer, I'll tell you more about the theme. But for right now, honestly, I just don't. I haven't done my own homework yet, and that's saying something because I lead some of the kid groups. Oh. So anyway. No, I haven't done my homework yet, but I don't know the official theme yet, but it's coming.
They usually do a Bible lesson. I hope you've heard of some of these lessons. I'm sure you probably have, but
look, there's people that know what the theme is, and they know what it is. I don't, but they do.
Well, I didn't know. I just wondered because apparently scuba is a VBS theme that is very hot this year.
Oh, it's the big theme.
It's a big. You usually see the same theme in like a bunch of churches.
Yeah,
like it's probably a new one, I would assume.
So the reason for that is usually, and I think it's usually group publishing leads the way. And so group publishing will kind of lead the way in that. I could be a little off on that, but then CPH and a lot of these other publishing houses, CPH is ours, Concordia, they will follow similar themes, not the same theme, but similar themes. And then the way that the benefits everybody is because you got like companies like Oriental Trading and others, craft supply places.
Oh yeah,
they'll stock up on certain things, and then see it all kind of works together.
This is like kind of like a Catholic Lent. You can, fish is okay on Fridays, sort of thing. Appeal to the fishermen.
Appeal to fishermen.
No, is that too much? Is that too controversial?
I don't even know.
I don't know. I didn't grow up Catholic, so I'm just kind of talking, with very little context to how that actually works. But anyway, sorry. Go on. Yeah. So they stock up on the theme, is what you're saying.
Yeah, so everybody can kind of access that and all that kind of stuff. I mean, again, some of this is like a big system, but like the themes are never quite identical. Uh-huh. And then on top of that, like group themes and these other places, even CPH actually will sometimes have a secondary theme. Mm-hmm. So for group, they'll have what's known as an easy track and then a Holy Land adventure. And so it'll be a completely different theme. Sometimes that's a desert theme. Anyway, and then like I know even CPH used to have one theme that kind of followed along suit, and then they had one that was like bilingual. So it was like Spanish and English.
Oh, that's cool.
So you can order it if you wanted to, and you could just do the English one, but English part of it, but it's bilingual, so you could do Spanish if you wanted to.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
You know any Spanish?
Not really.
Okay.
Although I got it on Duolingo, so I'm
that's
learning.
Right, you're doing Duolingo.
I got on Duolingo, so I'm working on it.
Yeah.
Pretty soon I'll be able to say I would like some bread.
Yeah, I wish I knew. I really wish I knew, but I don't.
We all wish we knew how to order bread.
In Spanish,
In Spanish.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting, I did fall into the trap like a year ago where I started watching the Dollar Tree like crafting people.
Yeah.
They were all like stay-at-home moms. So I'm just watching a bunch of stay-at-home moms crafting, which is fun. And it's so I'm like VBS. It's like, oh, that's, you get to do a lot of crafting and stuff and do all those little things, turn a 2-liter bottle into a scuba tank, that's cool.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Little did you know you could do that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You can do all sorts of stuff. It's fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a lot of fun. A lot of fun. But anyway, yeah, so we got, like I said, we got a lot of stuff coming up, but for right now, I think we're all good. I don't think we have a lot really going on the next couple weeks, which is nice for me, especially.
What is this right at this point in time? Is there a certain name for this period after like Easter is sort of?
Yeah. We're in the Easter season.
Yeah.
We're in the Easter and the Easter season. So and again, this is always fun to think about. In fact, I was just talking about this earlier tonight. So the Easter season will last like 6-7 Sundays, something like that. Basically, it will run from Easter Sunday through Ascension.
Okay.
Now, Ascension is always on a Thursday because Easter is always on a Sunday. Ascension is always on a Thursday because it is exactly 40 days later. And that's significant because that is the length of time that Jesus, in his resurrected form, walked and talked and like was with his disciples. Mm-hmm. And I think that's always important because I remember whenever I was younger and that was like pointed out to me and I was like, really? But you stop and think about it. I mean, again, because like when I was growing up, it felt like anyway, I know it wasn't true. It felt like we celebrated Easter and then we turned around and said, yeah, and then Jesus ascended into heaven. And it left me with the impression that like Jesus rose from the dead, talked to a few people, and then ascended into heaven.
Right.
And then later you go, okay, well, I mean, no wonder people have doubts. And then you go, wait, no. He walked and talked for 40 days.
Yeah.
Like, no, Jesus didn't just like rise from the dead and then all of a sudden go, hey guys, have a great day, have a great life, whatever.
Yeah.
No. He was around. Now, he did appear and then disappear and appeared, like, with his disciples a few times, but, like, he also still walked and talked with them, like, this whole time.
Yeah.
Like, again, it wasn't just, like, an afternoon. He was with them for, like, over a month.
Yeah.
I mean, guys, think about that. Like, think how many people really saw Jesus because he was... And also think about how much that had to just burn some of the Jews that wanted to, put him down. Like here they put this guy to death.
I mean, beat him mercilessly.
Beat him mercilessly. He rises from the dead, and then he almost flaunts it, right? He like walks around going, "Yeah, like I'm still alive," like I rose from the dead. Like again, I remember whenever my professor was talking about that, like when we were over in Israel, like he's like, "Yeah, Jesus, if you follow his track and his where he walked, he probably had to walk right through here." Now think about that, like, and you could see from the top of the Temple Mount, where the temple was, you could see over the wall, and you would have been able to see Jesus and his disciples walk.
Yeah.
So you think about that. Here you're a Jew in the temple,
yeah,
and you're like, isn't that the guy we just murdered? Like, isn't that him? And aren't those his disciples? Yeah. But like he's just walking right by.
But it's like that movie Double Jeopardy. You ever see that movie? They already killed him. He already served his sentence, so they like can't lawfully kill him again.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of that is true really for them, but I mean, I would assume it's kind of the same thing. Like we already killed the guy. Like what are we gonna do now? Kill him again? Like
yeah. So anyway, I mean, yeah. So that is how the marker. Now after Ascension, usually you have one more Sunday afterwards, but then that's the end of the Easter season, and then after that you have Pentecost Day. And you think about it, Pentecost Day takes place 50 days, so,
yeah,
the Penta. And so, yeah, it all makes sense. We have one more Sunday, of Easter. And then after that, we'll start Pentecost and then Holy Trinity. And then we'll go back to what's known as ordinary time, our Pentecost as a season.
Yeah.
And it'll last pretty much till October.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Long time.
Yeah. But there's a reason it's called ordinary time.
Yeah, it's ordinary.
Usually it emphasizes the growth of the church. So, yeah.
That's a positive.
It is a positive.
Well, cool. Anything that
I think that's it for me. I think that's all I know. Cool. So anyway, thanks everybody for joining us tonight or whenever it is that you're listening to it. I'm obviously like really tired. I'm like I keep saying things.
You didn't say anything wrong. It is nighttime, technically.
It is. Us. It is. But anyway, thank you for joining us, all those that listened. Take care and God's blessings. Bye.
Bye.